Hi, I'm Matt Chandler here, pastor of the Village Church. Just want to thank you for streaming this sermon on your device. I wanted to, just before we get going here, just lay before you a deep conviction we have that this video sermon that we've prayed really stirs up your affections for Jesus and shapes you and molds you into the image of the Son, would just be supplemental to your relationship with the Lord and in no way would replace the church you should be plugged into or the pastor that God has put over your life to shepherd and care for your soul. And so please enjoy the next hour or so of this message. We have prayed that God would use it in a profound way in your life. Blessings.
Well, how are we? Doing well? No, yes? Okay, that guy over there is doing great. If you have your Bibles, go ahead and grab them. We're going to be in Deuteronomy chapter 6. This has been the text that we've been in really for a month now as we've talked about family discipleship. And so what we see in Deuteronomy chapter 6 is what the Jews would have called the Shema. It was how they understood God growing hearts towards himself. And so we saw in week one this kind of three concentric circles. And then we've said all along that if you are a parent, you are making disciples. You don't get to go, well, you know what, I'm a parent, but I'm not really going to make a disciple. You are discipling them, right? And you see this all the time. Anytime you see like a 4-year-old run up and say something absurd like hook 'em, you know that their parents are discipling them, right? Or gig 'em, or sick 'em, or whatever, right? Boomer, whatever. What happens in that moment is you have discipled your children. We don't do that in this house. We do this, right? We cheer for them. We want them to lose every week. And you're making a disciple. Every time your child does something that you do and you see that, you've made a disciple. When they talk like you, every parent has that moment of crisis where our kid just acted like us and we went, oh no, right? They're literally doing what I do, not what I say. That's making disciples. So if you have a kid, you're a disciple maker. The question is not, the argument is not, are you making disciples, but rather, what are you discipling them towards? That's always the question. Because as a parent, you are discipling your children. You're shaping how they see the world. You're shaping how they interact with that world. You have created for them touchdowns that are success and failures that are marked. You have done that. You have said, this is the win in our family. This is the loss. You do that. Whether it's like you know you're doing it or not, you have said to your children, this is what's important, this is what's not important. We're going to orient our lives around this, and we're not going to orient our lives around this. You have done that. Right now, you're a parent, regardless of how old your kid is, you are doing just that. You're saying to your family, this is what we value, and this is what we do not value. And so the Shema is actually quoted by Jesus in the New Testament when a group of men ask him, what's the greatest commandment? Like, what does it really mean to follow the Lord, right? He quotes the Shema. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And you should love your neighbor as yourself. The second command is like the first, right? So they're tied together. And so the Shema is deep with meaning. And so we said in week one, we kind of looked at this concentric circles of how disciples of Jesus are made. And so let's look at this again together. Deuteronomy chapter 6, starting in verse 4. Here's what we're looking for. Concentric circles of how our hearts grow and overflow out of themselves to make disciples. Deuteronomy 6, starting in verse 4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. Now let's just stop. There's circle number one. And circle number one is just what it means to be a Christian. This is a stunning pronouncement of how and what it looks like to follow God. I said in week one, we don't have a ton of time. I can't rehash the entire series, but I do want to say to you over and over and over again that you are not primarily a thinking being. And what I mean by that is your life is not marked by what you think is right and wrong. Your life is marked by what you love. We are primarily lovers and worshipers. And so you can say with your mouth all you want about what you value and what you treasure and what you stand for, but when all's said and done, you are a person driven by your loves. This is universally true. This is why Jesus says where your treasure is, there's your heart. You want to know what you really value, you want what you really love? Look at what you spend your money on. That's what, so forget the rhetoric It's our hearts and our loves that drive us. That's why Jesus' command here, the command of God coming down to the people of God, is not do these things and don't do these things, but rather work on growing a love relationship with me. Because if you love me with all your heart, all your soul, all your might, then all of the rest of that takes care of itself. So that what the Christian does is give themselves over to the filling of their lives with things that stir their affections for Jesus. That's a sweet gig. Right? What stirs up my heart for Jesus? What is it? Right? I know the Bible's going to be involved. I know prayer's going to be involved. But what else is it? Is it early mornings? Is it late nights? Is it this type of scenery? Is it this kind of book? Is it this kind of space? What is it that stirs my affections for Jesus? And what is it that robs me of that affection? And then I'm just going to jam my life full. And there's just nothing awful about that at all. Like, what really stirs up my heart towards happiness in Christ? Well, fill my life with that. It was like, oh gosh, that sounds like such a drag, right? No. This is building ourselves up in love so that if we've got any shot of discipling our children in what ultimately will matter, it starts with us being serious about a growing love relationship with God, right? A growing love relationship with God. So we're in different spaces in that. Some of us just have a little inkling of love. Others of us are further down the line and are just a flame. But the call on your life and my life as a mom and dad, in fact, as a Christian, is to have our affections stirred towards Jesus Christ. And then that leads us into the second circle, verse 7. You shall teach them diligently to your children and shall talk of them when you sit in the house and when you walk by the way and when you lie down and when you rise. And you shall bind them as a sign on your hand and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. So that's circle 2. That's your children, your home is this place where as you do life, you're talking about the things of the Lord, you're teaching them a love for the Lord. You can't make them love the Lord, but you are modeling for them what it looks like to love the Lord, so that you're not just church goers, but your home is shaped by this God that you say you love, right? And then verse 9 is the third circle. We haven't talked much about the third circle. We're not going to today, but verse 9. Verse 9 is, you shall write them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates. This is that kind of outward focus, kind of missional living where the world sees that we value and treasure Christ in a way that's compelling, right? It's on our doorpost, it's on our gates. People know that we're weirdo religious people. They know that we love the Lord and we're serious about him. We're not just churchgoers, but we've been transformed by something. We're odd, aliens and strangers, as the Bible would call us, right? And so then we set out to say, when we're talking about family discipleship and these concentric circles, we're talking about time, moments, and milestones. And on time, we just define time like this. And all these are going to come together in today's talk. In time, we talk about creating intentional time built into the rhythm of the family's life for the purpose of thinking about, talking about, and living out the gospel. And so there were 4 C's when we talked about time. I was really proud of myself on coming up with 4 C's. We talked about consistency. And so don't lose heart, parents. We're not talking about on consistency like every Monday night at 7 we're having a family devotional, because that's not always going to happen. You're going to lose heart because you're not consistent. What we mean by consistency is it's not a one-time conversation where we check the box, right? We don't have one spiritual conversation with our children and go, okay, I did that. We'll see what they decide. But it's a consistent, we keep bringing it up. We keep having the conversation. And then the second thing we talked about on this is clarity. It's important that our kids understand what we're saying. And so we ask open-ended questions. We ask them to repeat back to us what they thought we heard as we consistently have these conversations. Then we talked about creativity. I used that great G.K. Chesterton quote about the gladness of the heart of God and how childlike God is because he does not sin. And I really wanted to just kind of force the issue on every time you talk about spiritual matters with your children, you furrow your brow and get crusty, that's not helpful, right? If you're always like, you straighten up, God loves you and he loves all of us. Like, that's just not helpful. Like, the God of the Bible, according to the Bible, sings, laughs, dances, delights, he plays. So I'm not saying there isn't a space in which kids should be serious. I'm saying there's a kind of seriousness that brings joy. And so parents should lead the way in the joy of the Lord. And then we finally talked about counsel. And what we said on counsel when we talked about time is that we want to make you look like all-stars, mom and dad. So we're going to do everything we can to set you up for the win. And so if you've got a 1st through 5th grader that's in class, when you go pick them up today, we got you again. Sheets waiting. right? And it's waiting right on the door. You'll pick up your kid. This is in the door. You take it, and here's what we've got. We've got your conversation home. You're not adding anything to your schedule. You're going to get in the car and go somewhere after this. I know that. You're going to get in your car, and you're going to drive somewhere. And so we've got 4 questions for you, and we've clearly set you up this week, even more so than other weeks. Today, they've learned that Jesus alone brings sinners to God. Here's your question. Today, you learned about someone being the way, the truth, and the life. Who is that? Thank you. I just finished preaching through the I am statements of the Gospel of John. You missed that one. I'm furious, right? No. Jesus is. And so second question, what does it mean for Jesus to be the way? How does following him lead us to God? Now look, you got a 90% chance right there of hearing, I don't know. I don't remember. Okay, but listen, the win isn't that they have the right answer. The win is that in asking them the question, you're showing them a priority and a value of your family life that communicates to them that they're not just churchgoers, but that this Jesus is going to permeate our life. And then all you need is you need to find 15 minutes in your calendar this week, and we've got your family devotional. We just got it for you, spelled out, parents. Even the activity for this week. See, we want to set, when we're talking about counsel, we're saying we want to set you up to be mom and dad of the year. And so that's available for you every week. And then the next week we talked about moments. So that's time. Then we talked about moments. Moments are about capturing and leveraging opportunities in the course of everyday life. Again, this is what we're already doing for the purpose of gospel-centered conversation. So if we're gonna turn moments, little moments of everyday life into conversations about the gospel, there were 3 things I said we were gonna need. We're gonna need to be observant. We're gonna have to pay attention to the kids that we have, how they're wired. We're gonna need to look for those opportunities. We're gonna be prepared. And we needed to know really kind of 2 things on being prepared. We need to know something of the nature and character of God, and we needed to know something in regards to godly character. If you're like, I'm no theologian. All right, so again, we got you. You don't have to be. You just have to be able to read pages 22 and 23. So you might be like, that's a huge book. And I'm saying, fine, 2 pages, 22 and 23. And now you've got something of the nature and character of God and something about godly character that you can seize these moments and turn the conversation to who God is and what God wants for us for our joy and his glory over and over and over again. And then lastly, we talked about being genuine. And when we talked about being genuine, we talked about the fact that ultimately what we want our kids to know is that we don't want to manipulate them with the Bible or try to control them with religion, but we want there to never be a doubt that we love them and that we're for them. We want to love the kid we have, not the one we want, right? So, some of our kids, they're optimists and everything's always awesome. They're kind of Tigger. And then some of our kids they're like Eeyore. Like, I knew it was gonna rain today. I thought it was, they're more like Eeyore. And you don't ask Eeyore to be Tigger and you don't ask Tigger to be Eeyore. You love the kid you have, not the one you want, right? You engage them where they are. You're genuine. You love them, and so they might not agree with you, but there shouldn't be any doubt in their minds that you see them and that you love them, right? And this is what we mean by genuine. And so then lastly, you got time, you got moments, and we'll end our series today by talking about milestones. And here's milestones. Milestones are marking and making occasions to celebrate and commemorate significant spiritual milestones of God's work in the life of the family and the child. And so here's a good way to think about it. Marking and making, celebrating and commemorating. That's what we're doing. So now these all start to flow together. As we're spending this intentional time being consistent with these conversations, seeking clarity, having fun, using the tools that are available to us, and as we're seizing these moments, as we observed with how we've prepared, and now we begin to, in these moments, mark pretty big ones, and then begin to make some other ones. And then we celebrate and we commemorate these things. And so let's just talk about marking and making. Number 1, let's talk about marking. God has wired us to be people that remember. So I just think this will be a universal experience for everyone in the room. If you ever go out with a group of your friends, you ever go out with a group of family members. So if there's a group, maybe it's just 4 of you, maybe it's 6 of you, maybe it's 10 of you, but if you go out every single time you get together, at some point, regardless of what the point of the evening is, it will devolve into storytelling. Right? And as soon as somebody starts to tell the story, then you can just see other people go, just waiting for them to finish so they can throw their story out there. And then it just becomes, hey, remember that time? Or hey, one time I was. We are a storytelling people. And this is universally true everywhere in the world. Like by the grace of God. I've been multiple places in Africa, in India, in China, in Europe, in Australia, in South Africa. Everywhere I go, people at dinner tell stories. They remember, they laugh, they cry. Most of the stories are crazily embellished, like they're different every time it's told. Like, wait a minute, I thought last time it was 2 touchdowns, that game. Oh no, there was a pick 6. Oh yeah, you just for 7 years have never mentioned that. And then tonight, apparently the pick 6 enters the story, right? Because you become a better athlete as you get older, not a worse, right? The older you get, the better you were. And so this is what happens. We're a storytelling people. We remember. And yet one of the evidences that not all is well in our hearts is what we choose to forget. One of the evidences that not all is well in our hearts is what we choose to forget. Namely, when it comes to God, the people of God throughout the scriptures and throughout history are very quick to forget how good God has been to them historically. And so God will deliver, He will save, He will make a way, He will invade dark spaces and drag into the light. He will show up and support and build up and enable and empower us to hang in there, if not outright flourish and conquer. And then what'll happen is we'll hit another storm, we'll hit another low point, and then all of a sudden we feel like God's abandoned us and that He betrayed us, and we just knew He would eventually do this because we don't have a consistent quiet time, and we knew, right? That's where we go. We go to the dark places. We're prone to forget the goodness of God. And when we're talking about marking, we're talking about remembering and building things into our lives that enable us to remember. Let me show you one place this happens biblically, although, man, I could be at length with this. Just so you know, I am swimming in the book of Exodus right now because I'll start to preach it in the fall. So we'll start mid-August and we'll go through, I think, next June in the book of Exodus. And so just be prepared that for the rest of the summer, every subtext I use, not the anchor text, but the subtext, will probably be out of the book of Exodus. So Exodus chapter 12, starting in verse 24, says this. This is right after the Passover. You shall observe this rite, that rite being the Passover meal, as a statute for you and your sons forever. And when you come to the land that the Lord will give you, as He promised, you shall keep this service. And when your children say to you, what do you mean by this service, this meal? You shall say, it is the sacrifice of the Lord's Passover. For He passed over the houses of the people of Israel in Egypt when He struck the Egyptians, but spared our homes or houses. And the people bowed their heads and they worshiped. And then later on, when the people of Israel cross the Jordan River and get to the other side, now they're in the promised land, God commands a man from each of the 12 tribes to grab a stone and to build an altar on the other side of the Jordan River. Why? As an act of remembrance. So, and it's very familiar language when they build that altar, so that they might look and remember what God accomplished in their day, that God, longing to anchor us to Himself, anchor us in His goodness and grace, to fortify us in the day of trouble as we live in this space in between what Christ has purchased for us in its ultimate fulfillment in the return of Christ or our death. We remember. We're anchored in the truth of God's goodness in our lives by building milestones that enable us to remember. This is what marking is all about. And so for our kids, we're looking for those moments that are probably more significant moments than the smaller moments. So let me give some examples. When your child is baptized, that's a pretty big milestone. We want to commemorate that and we want to celebrate that. Your kids' first Bible, their first communion, right? Those kind of things, those kind of spiritual highlights where we want to mark those things. We want to commemorate them. We want to wire some things into our lives so they'll never forget all that God did to get them to that point. We want to figure out a way to celebrate that. It doesn't have to be complex. It can be taking them out to dinner. It can be buying them a gift. It can be a trip. And I'm not talking about Paris. Now, if you got that kind of flow, take them to Paris. Most of us don't, right? You know what? Glad you were baptized and take you to Paris. Like, that's not most of our world, all right? If that's you, get on your jet and go, boss. I'm just saying, you don't really need to do that. It could be driving down into Dallas. It could be taking them to a park, getting one-on-one time with them. My favorite is just a handwritten letter. Brothers, sisters, a handwritten letter to your children that marks special occasions will be a stunning gift to them the rest of their lives. Long after daddy and mommy are gone, a 40, 50-year-old son or daughter can pull a letter and remember, not through pictures, but through your very words, what they meant, what you loved about them, how you cared for them, and your hopes for them. And how easy is a handwritten letter? You don't have to be a poet. Golly, in the world that we live in, you don't even have to be able to spell. The computer will spell it for you. Or you can have your pen and then just type it in and go, oh gosh, nope, okay, autocorrect, okay, that's how you spell that word. Love. Right? You can do that. These are ways we mark, we commemorate. So our oldest, Audrey, turned 13 this year. And so one of the things Lauren wanted us to do as we thought about our children, thought about how we wanted to parent, is, for Lauren and I, there was never this point that anybody said to me, okay, now you're a man. Like no one ever did that. No one ever said, okay, now you're a man. So you just kind of wake up one day and you're like, oh gosh, I'm a man. Like you're in a weird meeting like that you can kind of remember your dad having when you're like sitting with a life insurance person and you're like, what? Why am I, oh my gosh, I'm a man. I'm buying insurance, life insurance for myself. When did that happen? Right? I've got a mortgage. That's freaking me out a little bit, right? There was never anything in my life that during transitional periods of my life, someone was there to say, you're doing great. This is stage 2. This is where we're headed. Come on, you can do it. And so we wanted to create those things for our children. And so when Audrey turned 13, it was in February, we had a rite of passage party for her. And so if that sounds really geeky and lame, it is geeky, it wasn't lame. So what Lauren and I did is we kind of sat down and we came up with 12 kind of attributes that Audrey has shown, part of who she is from when she was in diapers. And so Audrey is witty. That's a better way to say sarcastic or smart mouth, right? She's quick-witted. She is compassionate. She is crazy courageous. In fact, that's the only human being ever I was like, God, can you sow some fear into her heart, please? I mean, broken collarbone, been bucked off her horse, been rolled over on top of by her horse, only to get back up, smack it, and climb back on. I mean, just no fear in that girl at all. And so then we invited some women that really have poured into her, that love her, that she loves, brought a couple in from out of town, and then many of them are actually here. And the only men that were in the room were me, my dad, my father-in-law, and Lauren's brother. Those were the only men in the room. And then there are these women, and then 3 of her little friends. And what we did is we brought her cake in, and there were the 13 candles, and people would read that attribute, courageous, and they would tell a story and encourage her heart. We love the courage that God has put in you. We think that the Lord is going to use that courage in stunning ways. Be careful that your courage might lead you to this when what the Lord wants to do with this. We wanted to affirm it, call it out, and bless it. And then they would read that, and then I threatened them, all right, that you're going to need to stay about 3 minutes, all right? Somebody gets verbal diarrhea here, I'll shut it down, all right? I ain't scared to just go, all right, thank you. That was awesome. Courageous. Great. Next. So they would read that, light the candle, and then they went around the room. And after everybody had gone, the 12 attributes had gone, I had written a letter to Audrey where just blessed her. And then I talked about the space that we were entering, that at 13, you're moving more quickly towards womanhood, but you're still somewhat tethered to childhood. And so in that, there's this pressure and pull in 2 separate directions. You're gonna want more freedom. You're gonna want more space. You're gonna feel the pull of being who God designed you to be, and yet you're still a little bit tethered to childhood. So this is gonna create tension in you and conflict with us. This is universally true. Nobody's gonna escape 13 to 17 without drama, right? It just doesn't happen. And so we just wanted to acknowledge this is coming. Here's what we wanna lay before you. Because you're now 13, we will increase your responsibilities. And if you walk into these responsibilities, you will get increased freedom. If you do not walk into these increased responsibilities, you will not get more freedom. So in a very real way, 13-year-old Audrey, we are laying before you the opportunity to grow this direction and be supported in this tethering. And so I outlined exactly what those responsibilities would be and what kind of freedoms she could gain. And then there was an exchange in vows where everyone in the room committed verbally to Audrey that we were going to encourage her, pray for her, and when necessary, lovingly confront her for her good and the glory of God. And then we just laid before her the opportunity to walk into that and said, if you want to take this next step, you light the 13th candle. She came, lit the 13th candle. We prayed over her. We got all those little notes and books and kind of made a little thing for her and gave it to her so she could keep it and go back and read those things that we wrote for her. And here's, for the rest of her life, I think Audrey will look back on her 13th birthday and remember that night. She didn't get any exotic gifts or anything like that. It was just, at 13, we said to you, you've taken a step towards all God has for you in being a woman. And here's what that's gonna look like. And it's clear communication and celebration, and it was an epic night. That's what we mean by milestones, setting a marker down in a way that the mind is informed and the heart is stirred up. And then that moves us not just from marking, but now from to making. So you got marking and now making. And when we talk about making, here's what we're talking about. Marking is looking back. Making is looking ahead. And again, this idea of kids need something to aim for, right? They just need something to aim for. They need to know what's next. What's the next step? How should I be growing? And again, I think this is stuff you're already doing, right? Every time you say to your son, hold the door for your sisters, you're doing a making. You're saying this is what men do. Every time you say to your girls something, you're teaching them this is what a woman does. You're giving them something to strive for, something to grow into, and something to move towards. These are good, right things. Al Mohler, who is president of Southern Seminary and a leading intellect in our day. I don't know if you knew that, but intellect's actually a job. Tried to argue with one once that it wasn't, but he was an intellect, so I lost. But Al Mohler said this: in 1960, the vast majority of young adults had, by the time they reached 30, accomplished the 5 standard milestones used to measure adult status. These 5 milestones are sociological, not theological, although the Bible has much to say about all 5 of these. These milestones include completing school, leaving home, getting married, having a child, and establishing financial independence. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, less than 1/2 of all young women reached these milestones by age 30 in 2000. Even more concerning, less than 1/3 of all young men did. Now, what we're seeing in our culture is an ever-expanding time period of adolescence. So that you literally have 28-year-old boys, and that shouldn't be. 30-year-old girls, and that shouldn't be. Now, on these 5 standards, let me just say this about the 5 standards. There are, at times, forces outside of our control surrounding all of these. So you need to listen to that quote and go, well, I might live at home, but man, medically this happened, or financially this happened, or this situation. So it's not trying to judge you. It's just sociologically, here's how we've judged human flourishing in this culture as far back as we go. And so what happens when parents, because this is not a problem with children, it's a problem with parents. Right? Parents have not said, this is what it means to grow up, and we're going to, in a strong relationship with you, move you towards adulthood. We have said, you make us matter, you give us purpose, you give us value, so stay as long as you can, and we're gonna take care of anything that causes you pain, and we're not gonna make you fight your own fights, we're not gonna make you own your own sin, we're not gonna make you own your own mistakes, we're gonna clean it up for you, and we're gonna make your life a life of ease. And what you get is a 30-year-old boy playing Call of Duty on your couch. unwilling to commit to anything, unwilling to grow into what God has called for him. And I'm telling you, the broken kind of incestuous relationship that is you somehow get value from that you should not be getting from that. Your role as mom and dad is to lay out some pictures of what life is supposed to be, and in a strong relationship, move them in that direction. The fact that we make our kids make their beds isn't because if they don't make their beds, the house explodes. The reason we're serious about their schoolwork is not because I think that they make A's, all A's, they're gonna have better lives. I don't believe that. I don't think that's true. I certainly haven't seen that that's true. But hard work and discipline will be required regardless of where they go or what they're called to. And so we're making, here's what you do. And as they get older, that responsibility increases because they're growing closer and closer and closer to adulthood. My job is to get them to adulthood. That's my job, not to get my value, not to go, aren't they awesome and aren't I awesome because they're awesome? That's not what this is. Right? This is not a competition sport for parents. We love them, we encourage them, we walk with them, we shape them, we require of them, lovingly, honestly, openly require of them. We hold firm standards for them, loving them as they fail, understanding the grace of God on their lives like we understand it on ours, speaking life to them. We want touchdowns for them. Here's how you win, here's how we expect, and here's what we're gonna celebrate and rejoice in when you do it. And then we want to drop stakes in the ground. And here's where they start to be related. If you have older kids, then when you mark for that kid, you're making for your others. And so if I go back to Audrey's birthday, little brother, little sister in the room, and what they heard us say is, here's what you get when you're 13. You get increased responsibilities. So if all your homework's done and your reading's done and everything, then you get to stay up till 9. You don't have to go to bed at 8. Right? So now they're going, okay, I'd like that. Okay, well, here's what that requires. Okay, well, I'll move towards that. Well, move towards it when you're 13. Boom, you got it. Right? And so in one sense, you're marking while you're creating a touchdown for your younger kids. So that now there's not this kind of, what are we going to do? So they're like really geeked up about their 13th birthdays now. Because for us, we just decided 13 was going to be that age that we kind of dropped a stake in the ground for them. And then we're going to do it again, probably at 17 or 18, and then we'll see after that. So we haven't thought that far ahead, to be honest with you. We've got 13 down there, which is good because we have a 13-year-old, right? And so marking and making then can begin to walk side by side. Another game we've played with our kids is for the last 20 years, I have traveled more than I should. And by the grace of God, come this fall, I am here and at home, and most of my traveling will stop. And so I'm really, that's been a 2-year process of trying to stop the crazy pace that we've been living on. But what we told our kids is if they could sit through a service at the Village without having to get up and go to the bathroom, and without having to be told to be quiet and quit squirming, they could travel with Daddy. And so we've tested them. I mean, they get a once a month shot until they make it, and that's it. And so my kids will have to come in and sit on a weekend. Lauren's not singing, and they'll have to sit there, and they can't go to the bathroom, and they can't be told even once to be quiet, and they have to take notes. And when Dad gets home, they have to give Dad his outline. And if they can do that, they can travel with Daddy. I mean, you can giggle about that, but if I'm at a conference in an arena and I'm preaching my message and all of a sudden go, where'd Audrey go? That's a problem, right? And so they've got to do it. And we've been ruthless. I mean, we've got to, I just remember Reed was just like, oh, yeah. And then he just bailed with like 2 minutes left in the service. And we were like, good try again next month. I mean, it's not giving an inch on that, but that sets kind of a touchdown for them. If you can sit through an hour and 20-ish minute service, then you can travel with Daddy. And so at this point, man, I have had a blast. I mean, Audrey's been to London and San Diego and China and Uganda, and it's been awesome taking it with me. Reed's been all over. I was doing these men conferences called Act Like Men for a while, and little buddy went to every one of those things with me. Now, Nora, She still hadn't quite made it, right? She failed 2 weeks ago, so she got another 2 weeks to give it another go. She's got to hurry because Daddy's about to get off the road. So got to hurry up and get that trip in, Mama. And so we'll see. But that's an example, again, of just saying we want to create touchdowns for you. We want to create opportunities for you to grow and win, right? Now, when we talk about counsel, we talk about how the village wants to serve you to this end. So we've created some of these milestones for you. So let me give you some examples. And again, parents, I just think you can do this. You can do it. The first is we've created a baby dedication kit for you. And I'll tell you why we did it that way. It was my experience, and maybe my experience shouldn't be the gauge by which we gauged it, but it was my experience and others that baby dedications in the churches we got saved in was much more a fashion show for the kid than it was any type of real baby dedication. And so what we wanted to do is create a kit that you as parents could take and invite family members and friends and those who are going to be a part of this kid's life and could put on a formal baby dedication for that child with your family members and friends, where there's prayers and there's promises and there's vows and there's a certificate and there's all of that just set up for you so you can drop a stake in the ground and say, we're going to raise this child in the fear of the Lord, and we want our friends to hold us accountable to that. So that's just there for you. You can pick it up any given weekend. We wanted to provide that for you. Parents, I would pay particular attention to promotion Sundays, particularly kindergarten to first, because that's when they leave Little Village and they roll into Kids Village, and then 5th to 6th, because that's when they leave Kids Village, our elementary school ministry, and roll into junior high, and then 8th to 9th, because that's when they roll into high school. And again, this isn't complex. Moms and dads, this is simply promotion Sunday. You're taking that kid, you're gonna take them to lunch, and then you just talk about what you saw and loved about the elementary school years. You remember, you do what you do. You tell a couple of funny stories, love this about you, excited for you as we're moving into, are you anxious about it? What are you nervous about? Well, man, I'm not nervous. I mean, maybe I am, but I'm not telling you I'm nervous. You're going to do so well. You're going to have great opportunities. There's some dangers, but mom and dad are here. And I mean, that's just conversation over lunch. Grandparents, get in that game. Get in that game, grandparents. We need you. And then other examples, baptism. Like we have a family baptism class where you can sit in the room with your child and hear about baptism. And then there's some questions that we ask you and you get to ask them. And it's this real kind of cool kind of milestone moment that baptism is. And we want to come alongside of you and help you. One of my favorites that we have done every summer for I think the last 4 or 5 years is because we know it's here. We've got live on our website right now the summer activity guide for families. And so right now, if you went and you gave money to Louisville and you registered to serve on July 30th, and on the other campuses know what I'm talking about, and then you downloaded this book, we got you. You don't need to read this book. You can just use this book. So as summer's coming along, if you're going on vacation, boom, table of contents, vacation. If you're flying, we got you. If you're driving, we got you. How to turn that aspect of vacation into conversations about the Lord, dropping a stake in the ground. We've got fun family activities for you, hence summer family activity book. Right? Going on hikes, going on walks, watching a movie outside, all sorts of things. We just want to give it to you so you can drop stakes in the ground with your children. Lastly, if you have middle school and high school students, not lastly, but if you have middle school and high school students, we've provided, what we do every 2 years is we do a series on sex and sexuality, followed by a commitment service. The next one will be May of 2017. And so we're doing that every 2 years with our students. And then lastly, when your child turns 16, they are now eligible's a strange word. I don't know another word to use there. Eligible to become covenant members of the church. And the reason we like 16 is they're able at 16 to serve the local body in a way that they're more mindful of and knowledgeable of what they're doing. So at 16, they can sit through covenant membership class, become covenant members, and then begin to serve the church. And that's a huge deal. That's a huge milestone to celebrate that they belong to the local body in a way where they're working out the one another's in a given local context. That's a great opportunity. And so these are ways we're just trying to set you up to win, mom and dad. Now, Josh Patterson, who's one of the lead pastors, we have 3 lead pastors here and an elder. He does this great talk on the philosophy of ministry for the Village Church. So if you've been in our membership class, you've heard it. If you haven't, you probably haven't, but eventually I'll have him do it on a weekend. And what we looked at is we looked at kind of the landscape of where we were. There's multiple ways to do family discipleship. There's not a wrong way. You just kind of, you got to choose the way you want to do it. So think about Josh's illustration is if you watch football, there's the 4-3 defense and the 3-4 defense, right? It's not right or wrong. It's you got to pick one to run. You can't, if you try to run both, you're going to have the wrong personnel and you're probably going to get scored on a lot. And so you got to pick your defense. You got to hire that according to that scheme, and then you got to execute correctly. And so there are two ways to do family discipleship. One is a highly programmatic approach. And what that means is that the church would hire staff and build out robust programs where you kind of drop your kid off and we teach them the Bible, and then you drop your kid off and we teach them how to sing songs, and then you drop your kid off and then we teach them how to pray, and then you drop your kid off and we teach them about global missions, then you drop your kid off and right? And there's nothing wrong with that. There are churches right by God, pleasing to the Lord, doing that all around us. We think it's awesome. And yet, at the end of the day, they're going home with you. And regardless of what we build in regards to programming, we will never have the influence that you will in your time with them. So what we wanted to do, what our philosophy of ministry is on family discipleship, is we have things for them to come to and to learn about and to teach them. But what we want to do more and more and more is just put everything in your hands and be your biggest fans. We want to say, Mom, Dad, you can do this. Mom and Dad, you're going to crush this. Here, all you've got to do is read these sentences on the way home. All you've got to do is find, and again, I'll say we're a month into this. Nothing has, 15 minutes a week makes you Mom and Dad of the year. I don't care what you do in here, you've got 15 minutes. 15 minutes to look at the calendar, to intentionally think about how you want to apply, and then to execute. It's going to be imperfect. It's going to be messy. But Americans want things fast and big and famous. But that's not how discipleship works. Discipleship is slow. It's inefficient. It's a moment at a time for a lifetime. Moms, dads, you can do this. And if you're here and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start. No, you know exactly where to start. We'll be done in 10 minutes and you're gonna just pick this up. And you're gonna say, hey, today you learned about someone being the way, the truth, and the life. Who could that be? And you're probably you might even get, oh no, Jesus. Was it Jesus, buddy? Yeah. Well, how is he the way? How does he get us to God? I don't know. Man, I don't either. But you know what? We're going to find out together. Now, here's something I want to, by the grace of God, just knock out of your head. For whatever reason, in our minds, we think success is walking up to one of our kids and going, hey, I just noticed you seem a little bit agitated lately. You seem like something's off. Or, are you okay? Is everything all right in your world? That the only way that can possibly be successful is if then in that moment they start to cry and you go, you know what? No. I've just really been struggling. And will you teach me what to do? Will you lead me? And I'm telling you, Mom and Dad, stop that. The win is the question itself. The win says, I see you, I care about you, I'm here for you. Gosh, they might not know what's going on in their own hearts. Think of how often you don't know what's going on in yours. The win is not them being able to all over you what's going on. Now, occasionally that will happen, and that's an awesome gift from God. Your job, parents, isn't to extract that from them like they're prisoners with information that you need to have. It's to let them know you're here, that you love them and that you see them. It's, are you okay? Is everything going all right? How are things with your friends? How's school been? What's going, everything all right out at the barn? I've just noticed. It's not, better tell me what's going on at the barn. I'll call her mom. You think I won't call her mom? You think I won't call up their school and get to the bottom of this? Better tell me what's going on. That's not saying I love you, I care for you. That's you're a liar and I don't believe you and I'm going to manage your life for you. Now, our job is not to manage their lives. Our job is to love, to lead, to set boundaries, to grow them in responsibilities and to turn their eyes towards Jesus. Mom, Dad, you can do this. You're going to crush it. I'm already proud of you, and we haven't even got out of here yet. So I thought we would end our series the way we started our series, and that's by reading out loud together boldly Psalm 145, verses 1 through 9. This is a psalm. I'm going to put it on the screen. I saw many of you reach for your sword. I like that. I like that quick reflex, but I'm going to put it on the screen for us. And then what we're going to do is we're going to boldly read this out loud, and we're going to just fill this auditorium and the other auditoriums with the Word of God, talking about the greatness of God and commending the greatness of God to the next generation. And so do me a favor, will you stand as we read this together? I'm gonna start and then I'm gonna bail out a little bit because you tend to read better when I'm not reading with you. So let's start this together. I will extol you, my God and King, and bless your name forever and ever. Every day I will bless you and praise your name forever and ever. Great is the Lord and greatly to be praised, and his greatness is unsearchable. One generation shall commend your works to another and shall declare of your mighty acts. I will declare your greatness. They shall pour forth the fame of your abundant goodness and shall sing aloud of your righteousness. For the Lord is gracious and merciful, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love. The Lord is good to all, and his mercy is over all that he has made. Amen. Father, we thank you. We bless your name. Would you, in your mercy, encourage our hearts, strengthen our hands? And I pray that we might, in small ways, nurture and cherish the souls you have entrusted to us. It's for your beautiful name we pray. Amen.